We have a few schedule updates, so wanted to share the following with all of you. This week, the president will speak with Hill leaders and Democratic governors. He will travel to Wisconsin on Friday. He will conduct a sit-down interview with George Stephanopoulos from ABC News while on the campaign trail. He will travel to Philadelphia on Sunday. And next week, I know you guys are going to be really excited about this, he will host a press conference during NATO. This is in addition to the previously announced events this week, and I will be happy to take your questions. All right, Colleen, go for it.
Thanks, Karine. So there are growing calls from Democrats, including members of Congress, for the president to step aside for the 2024 election because he's not capable of serving another 4 years. What is his response to this?
So let me just step back for a minute and I guess deal with the questions that have come in about the debate. And honestly, this is something that the president has addressed himself multiple times since this past Thursday. And first of all, I want to say we understand the concerns. We get it. The president did not have a great night, as you all know, and many of you reached out during the debate. The president had a cold. He had a hoarse voice. You all heard it. That's why you reached out. But I will say this, and the president said this over the past couple of days, certainly right after the debate. He knows how to do the job. And he knows how to do the job, not because he says it, because his record proves it. Because for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, the president's record has been unprecedented, delivering for the American people. Another thing that he said that I would add is he knows right from wrong. He knows how to tell the truth. And again, he knows how to deliver for the American people. Joe Biden is a person. Take away his title. He is someone who has dealt with tragedy. He is someone who has confronted that head on. He is someone who knows how to get back up once you've been knocked down. That is something that he understands very, very well. And I think, and we believe, that's something that many of Americans across the country understand as well. And he knows how to come back. He knows how to come back. And so the president's going to continue to focus on what he's been doing the past 3.5 years. He's going to continue to focus on the American people. And, you know, to your question, just to add a little bit more to your question, look, you heard from Speaker Pelosi, you heard from Representative Clyburn, and let me just paraphrase a little bit of what they said. Speaker Pelosi, who's very close to the president, said it is not about performance in terms of a debate, it's about performance in a presidency. And this is a president, you've heard me say this, we've talked about this, he's been able to give us an economic recovery, the strongest economic recovery in modern history. Let's not forget, during the midterms of 2022, many of you all, some of you in this room, said that it was going to be a red wave, and that didn't happen. He defeated Big Pharma. We have seen historic low in crime, in more than down to 50-year low. And then you had Representative Clyburn, who said the president has done a great job leading for the last 3.5 years. The best predictor of future behavior is past performance. This is from Clyburn. And when you look at the record of President Biden versus former President Trump, you see President Biden, who has delivered the strongest recovery in modern history, versus the previous administration, whose plans hurts the middle class. And President Biden, who is committed to protecting our fundamental freedoms, versus the former president, the previous administration, doing everything that they could, and they did, to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they are responsible for that. And that's coming from two people who are not just leaders in Congress, but also close to the president.
I think part of the problem that Democrats are articulating is that it wasn't just that he had a cold, but rather he had, answers. He was trailing off. He didn't answer some questions in a sort of fulsome way. And speaking of Nancy Pelosi, one of the things that she recently said was that it was a legitimate question whether his performance was an episode or a condition. So I guess I wondered if there's been any consideration given to releasing a more robust set of medical records or something to show his mental acuity.
So I will say this, look, and again, I get the question. It is a fair question to ask. We are not taking that away, and that's why the president certainly has spoken to this. As it relates to his medical records, we have been transparent. We have released thorough reports from his medical team every year since he's been in office. That is something that we have been pretty consistent about. as it relates to, something like a cognitive test, to the question that you're asking me about what the speaker, former speaker said. Obviously, she can speak for herself. His team, who has said, the medical team said it is not warranted in this case. We have put forward a thorough, transparent annual report on his health. So they have said that is not warranted. It is not necessary. Again, we understand. We understand. We're not taking away from what you all saw or what the American people saw. We understand. It was a bad night. It is not uncommon for incumbents to have a bad night on their first debate. And we are going to continue to do the work that we have been doing on behalf of the American people. I think the president record certainly speaks for itself. Okay, Risha.
Thank you, Karine. You just reminded us that President Biden had a cold on Thursday. What medications was he taking in the days or hours leading up to the debate?
And I know that question has come in a couple of times to us. He was not taking any cold medication.
Was he taking any medication that would have interfered with his
He
performance?
was not taking any cold medication. That is what I can speak to. I've asked his doctor, and that's what he stated to us.
After the debate, did the president get examined by a doctor, or did he get a neurological scan?
A neurological scan? Look, what I can say is that, just to take a step back, it was a bad night. We understand that it was a bad night. And the president has spoken to this. And he understands that. And so I cannot speak to anything beyond what I just shared. The president has regular annual physicals that we release in a thorough report. We're going to continue to do that. I don't have anything else beyond that.
So was the last time he was seen by a doctor then in February?
I just don't have anything beyond that, beyond the question of a neurological exam.
Okay, well, you continue to say it was just a bad night, but is there an explanation then for why it was so bad? If it's not his stamina, if he prepared, as you guys say, for so long, if it's not a problem with his mental fitness, what happened that night? What did we see?
I will also add that the president also spoke to this as well. He said, I'm not as smooth as I used to be. I don't debate as well as I used to. I don't walk as easily as I used to. But one thing that he knows is how to deliver for the American people. He understands that. He understands that he's not a young man, obviously. He said this. But his focus is going to continue to deliver for the American people on the issues that they care about: the economy, expanding health care, fighting for Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, making sure that we continue to be leaders on the world stage, which is something that this president has been able to do, and turn around the mess that this last administration created, as certainly on not just domestically but on the world stage. Okay.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not.
Given the fact that it's more than a bad night when his political future is threatened, would he be willing to provide more medical information? Would he be willing to have Dr. O'Connor provide more to answer these questions?
Look, Kelly-O, certainly understand the question, appreciate the question, but what we have provided has been very transparent.
But it's
Has
not
been,
recent.
has
And
been.
the country watch.
But February was this year. It wasn't too long ago. It was indeed this year, and we provided transparent report, a thorough
There were
report.
many Americans who were concerned about his capacity. Was he okay? What happened? And we've now gone several days where he has only done teleprompter comments. He has not taken questions. I know you've announced a press conference.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. An interview. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
But there is a period of time here where the public is trying to understand what happened.
Yeah.
And the president could help to answer that by engaging with us in an unscripted way right now.
So let me just say a couple of things. There's a couple of things that you said that I do want to address. Number one, less than an hour after the debate, he went and he engaged directly with the American people, right? He went to a watch party. He was in a room with hundreds of supporters who watched the debate. And when he walked in, they cheered him on. And he did a photo line with them for some time. Some of your colleagues had an opportunity to speak to these supporters. He did that. And that was something that he was able to do right after. And then we stopped at a Waffle House, as some of you all know, and spoke to a packed restaurant. So he spent some time there. Then the next day, he went to North Carolina, spoke in front of hundreds of supporters there who said, "We support you, Joe. We love you, Joe." And so he was able to do that. In those 2.5 days or so after the debate, he went to 4 states and engaged with supporters, engaged with American people, everyday people, heard directly from them. And let's not forget, when we landed in North Carolina, I think it was like 2 a.m. in the morning, he engaged with supporters there as well. So the president has been out there. He's been listening to supporters. It's something that he loves to do, not just supporters, but American people out there, everyday people who appreciate what he does, who wants to hear more from him, as you just stated, and got that opportunity to do just that. I think it matters that he's going to do an interview on Friday. I think it matters that he's going to go to Wisconsin and do that, right? Engage with everyday people. We're going to continue to do that. Nothing has changed in that regard. We're going to continue to be out there. He's going to be in Pennsylvania as well this weekend, as I just stated.
And one more. We're reporting that Hunter Biden has been in some meetings with senior advisors. Why is the president's son involved?
So a couple of things I saw that reporting as I was coming out, so a couple of things there. Look, the president, as you know, is very close to his family. This is a holiday week, 4th of July. He spent time with his family, as you all know, and reported at Camp David. Hunter came back with him and walked with him into that meeting, that speech prep, and he ended up spending time with his dad and his family that night. That is basically what happened. It is a week where there's going to be more family members who are going to come to the White House. I'm sure you'll see some of them on 4th of July. Many more are expected to be here.
No issue with family being in the White House. The question, though, would be, is he participating in meetings with senior advisors?
What I can say is that he came back with his dad from Camp David. He walked him into the speech prep, and he was in the room. That I can tell you, he was in the room. Anything else coming out of that reporting I can't speak to, but I can say that, he's close to his family, which is not unusual. They were together at Camp David. They came back together. You're going to see a lot more family this week. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Karine. I want to go back to that question that Pelosi raised earlier today.
Sure.
Pelosi said it's a legitimate question to ask if this is an episode or is this is a condition. Which one is it?
Well, what I can tell you is that he had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode. I would see this as what it was and what we believe it to be, which is it was a bad night. And he did, on top of that, he had a cold. And that is the reality of the situation. That is the reality of what happened that night.
You've certainly seen the reporting out there that this is not just a standalone instance, that other people are saying that this has happened before. One, do you see these as legitimate questions? And also, are you being straight with the American people on this?
I see it as a legitimate question. I do. And I have said it is a fair question to ask. The president sees it as a legitimate question. And I think also the president saying, I am not a young man. I'm not as a smooth talker as I used to be. I don't walk as easily as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. I mean, the president is admitting and saying, and this is not the first time, right? He's talked about his age. He's joked about his age many times before. And so you heard that directly from, and we are acknowledging what people are seeing. But we do believe this was in this instance, it was a bad night.
Is he disabled?
No, and let me finish with your colleague, please. And I know, but shouting out, come on, you know better, come on.
Just one final question. Immediately after the debate, we started to hear the concern from Democrats on Capitol Hill, calling it just flat out a disaster. Why didn't the president immediately personally reach out to leaders on Capitol Hill, like Leader Jeffries and Leader Schumer?
Look, I can say this. Right after the debate, we were on a 2.5 day swing, 4 states. The president was out there hearing directly from the American people, engaging directly from the American people. Obviously, he respects the Democratic leadership. It is leadership there that has helped him deliver for the American people an unprecedented record on behalf of Americans across the country. So we appreciate them for, obviously. But he was out there. He was out there directly with supporters, engaging with them, whether it was at a tarmac, whether it was at a rally, whether it was at a watch party or a fundraiser. And I think that's important to note too. And he was hearing from them. But at the same time, those leaders, Democratic leadership, was hearing from members of his team, high-level senior members of his team. It's not like we were silent. It's not like we were quiet. It's not like we were not engaging with them. We were. And now that the president's back at the White House, he's going to have some time to talk to these Democratic leadership on the phone. I mentioned Democratic governors. He's going to do it with leaders on the Hill as well, and that's important. And then he's going to go back out into the states, obviously, and talk to Americans there. So he's going to do both.
What's his message going to be to the Democratic governors and Hill leaders when he talks to them?
So I'm not going to get into a private conversation. We wanted to share these meetings. I know it was getting out there, it was floating out there, and I know it was, and we just wanted to confirm that that we were indeed having these conversations. But we normally, as you know, our posture is not to dive into private conversations. He'll have these conversations. I think they'll be important. They'll hear from him. He'll hear from them. But I also want to note that there is a regular engagement with whether it's intergovernmental affairs or the Office of Legis Affairs, regular engagement from my colleagues here with governors, with mayors, and also obviously with congressional leaders. That is something that is a regular engagement. Obviously, the president himself will engage with them this week.
Karine, does he still have a cold? He seemed to be clearing his throat a bit.
He still has a
at the
cold.
last event.
Yes,
Okay.
I asked. He still has a cold.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Karine. You've said a couple of times now that the White House has provided thorough medical records for the president. The White House released a 6-page summary back in February. I don't think that was a full accounting necessarily. And Dr. O'Connor in that memo described the president as, quote, a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. I think that is clearly not what the majority of Americans are seeing. And we have a new poll from CBS News that says 72% of registered voters say the president does not have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. So are you saying that the majority of Americans are misguided and that they just need to trust Dr. O'Connor and take him at his word?
So a couple of things, and I want to say the president is feeling better, and you saw him last night, you saw him today, but he does indeed still have a cold. Look, I want to be very sensitive here, and I think it is important to be sensitive here. We understand how the American people are feeling. We get it. We do. And I do not want to take away from that. I'm not going to speak. I know that there was, you all did a poll, CNN did a poll. I'm not going to speak to every poll. I'm just not going to do that. And I'm constraints in doing that as we're heading into an election in November, as you know. What I will say is majority of Americans also support the work that the president has doing in a sense of his agenda and what he stands for, what he's been fighting for, whether it's reproductive rights, whether it's an economy that works for all. And that is something that the president is going to continue to do. And this is why we have said, and I have said this multiple times from here, is that's why the president acknowledges. We get it. We get what Americans are feeling. That's why he's acknowledging. He's not a young man. That's why he's acknowledging. He's a little slower than he used to be in walking and not as smooth as speaking. We get that. But we also want to make sure that we point to the successes that he's had, his record, and we want to continue to build on his unprecedented record. And I'm not going to discount what the American people see or feel. What I can say is what we know from our side of things. We could speak to his record, and we could speak to what the president has been able to acknowledge. And I think that's important too. And that's basically acknowledging what Americans are seeing and feeling.
If you get it, why not release more about his medical, his physical and mental health? Why not?
What we have released has been very comprehensive. It has been. It has been transparent. And if you compare it, right, it has. We have put that out there. And, and we'll continue to do so, put that information out there. And MJ, I want to be very clear. I get the question that you're asking me, but this is also a president who has had a historic administration. He has, in delivering on legislation, key policies. That is because with age comes wisdom and comes experience. And I think that matters as well.
Did Dr. O'Connor watch the debate?
I believe Dr. O'Connor traveled with us to the debate, so.
Did he have any concerns after seeing the
No,
president's
not at
debate
all.
performance?
Not
I
at
have
all.
one more question
Sure.
actually, Karine.
Sure.
The campaign's theory of the case for the president staying in the race has been that the president has a better shot of defeating Donald Trump than any other Democrat. We have a new CNN poll that shows the vice president actually has a slightly stronger showing against Donald Trump than the president. So how does the president explain not passing the baton to his own 59-year-old vice president given that kind of data?
So look, as you know, I'm constrained to speaking directly to your poll, and I get it, and I hear the question. I got to be mindful. That is something for the campaign, as you started saying, what the campaign has laid out, their argument of the case. That is something for them to take up, and that is something for them to answer. What I can speak to is the president's record, what I can speak to, what he's been able to accomplish, and the things that he's been able to do and get done is actually in line with majority of Americans, and I think that's important too, to note. And again, I will say, with age comes wisdom and experience, and that's certainly something that the president brings. Go ahead.
Karine, we've seen some real anger expressed by donors and Democratic officials, sort of how you guys have handled the president, shielding him away from impromptu settings and denying, excuse me, until last week that there had really been any age-related slippage. So I'm wondering if you guys have had a moment to reflect on that strategy, any regret over it, and if, what you would say to folks who think it's arrogant for there not to be either changes towards that strategy or with some of the personnel that are around the president.
And you're talking about the strategy specifically about who's around the president? Is that what
Well,
you're?
I think it's two parts,
Yeah.
right? One is a kind of small, concentrated group of aides that have been with the president for a very long time, and the other is sort of systematic decisions to shield the president from the impromptu moments that we've seen in previous administrations, whether it's press conferences or interviews or, just being out in public more frequently.
I mean, look, a couple things there too. This year, the president has done more than 40 interviews, and unscripted, right? Those interviews are unscripted. He has done more than 500 gaggles, right? Of course, unscripted, talking directly to many of you. No, let me just finish. And so he enjoys doing that. He enjoys engaging with all of you, and we're going to continue making sure that happens. I will say this. Obviously, this is a president that was a senator for 36 years. He was a vice president, as you all know. I'm just repeating things that you all know, for 8 years. And so he has long time, advisors that have been here with him for a long time. I don't think that's unusual. He also has people who are new to the administration that also advise him. Look, I've been in meetings with the president where it's been a diverse group of people, and he sees us, and he knows the reason why we're sitting in front of him is that we have something to share, and he wants to hear from all of us. I've heard him say, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think?" And so my experience has been that world is indeed open, and that he does get to hear from a diverse group of people. That has been my experience. But it is not unusual for someone who has been around for that long of time to have a group of people that's been around him for a minute, right? And I think that makes sense. There's nothing about that is nonsensical. That actually makes sense. And we're going to continue to get him out in front of all of you to take your questions at a steady drumbeat.
You mentioned NATO, and I have
Yeah.
two questions. One's
Sure.
just a logistical one, which is you mentioned the press conference.
Yeah.
Is that going to be kind of the real big boy press conference we're used to?
Did you say
or
big boy press conference?
like one of these 2-and-2s that might be a little more limited.
So I believe, and I know you guys are holding me to it. I believe it's a solo press conference. We'll certainly have more to share with all of you as we get closer to next week.
More thematically,
We support
Is
the
this-
big boy.
Yeah, I'm about to say, big boy Justin
Yeah,
over here
yeah.
is asking some big boy questions. Okay. Okay, Jackie.
Thank you, Karine. The administration strongly criticized the media for clips showing the president appearing to be confused, freezing at times, and you called it cheap fakes, misinformation, disinformation. In one case, even implied that it was the product of artificial intelligence, calling it deep fakes. Do you have any regret over using that language?
Not at all. Not at all. And let me be clear, it was a certain part of the media. And I mean, you can speak to this better than I can. A certain part of the media which was doing this. And look, independent mainstream fact checkers in the press and misinformation experts have been calling out cheap fakes. And at the end of the day, they're fakes. That's what they were. Targeting the president. They had said, the reporters and these misinformation experts said that this president was being targeted. And what we did was echo them. That's what we did. And look, we'll certainly continue to call that out. And the cheap fakes didn't come from me. I didn't coin that. That didn't come from this White House or this podium. That came from the media. They called it cheap fakes. And they said this president, President Biden, was being targeted on misinformation. It was purposefully being done to this president. And what we did is we echoed that. So I don't regret it at all.
Well,
It was just the
also
facts.
Use that sort of approach to counter the Wall Street Journal report, for instance, that interviewed 45 people over several months who criticized, the president's handling of himself in meetings, and broadly
Which approach? I'm not following. the
talking
question.
about the president's age being a factor.
I don't
The
understand
approach
where
from the
cheap
White House
fakes
to
was-
criticize
was
the
related.
reporting, to basically cast the reporting as not true. And broadly, this has been, the reason I ask is like the administration's response to our questions often seems to be, don't believe your lying eyes, the border's secure, Afghanistan withdrawal was a success, inflation's transitory. So is that gonna change?
I mean, you just laid out, Jackie, you just laid out a bunch of things, so just give me a second here. First of all, I think this is a give and take, right? Even in this briefing room, we go back and forth. I go back and forth with you, with your colleagues, with everyone here. And I think we have a right to say if something we don't think is true or something we think we want to push back on. That is a right for us to do, just like you have a right to push me and say, actually, our sources or reporting say this. I think it's a give and take. This is what makes what we do in this room almost every day. This is an exercise of democracy. This is an exercise of freedom of the press. That's what we're doing here. And I think if there's some reporting that we don't believe to be true, I think it's okay if we go back and forth and say, actually, we don't think that reporting is true, right? And so I don't see anything wrong with that. That is what this is. That is what this is. This is what we actually do on a daily basis. This is how we lead the world on making sure that journalism exists and you all have the right to do your jobs. But, we also have our right as the press office here in the administration, if we don't believe something is true or we want to share our side of things, that we do so.